Hi guys.
Hi.
It's
Hi,
wonderful
Nitish.
to see you guys.
Hi, sorry, we had some connection, and I think we are locked out the meeting room before.
Yeah, completely understandable. We've been facing some issues lately.
So we've taken a 5-minute break. So we wanted to give you some breathing space after you entered. So I think we should start within like 4 or 5 minutes. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Can we maybe test like if the slides can show?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Adolphus to give the test.
All right. Yes, we can see your slide. I think you guys are on mute, so we can't exactly hear you if you're speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Adolphus, you are on mute.
All right, my apologies. All right, so here's, I'll share the screen again. All right. Okay, so I think we're good to start.
Yeah, so before you start, I'd like to open with an introduction of both of you so that the audience is acquainted. Nidish, are we good to go?
Yeah, let's
Yes.
All right. Hi guys, we're back from the short break, and I'd like to start by introducing Yujie Wang, who has been educated at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the University of Toronto. He is the co-founder of Muser and AiRCAD, if I pronounced it right, and with research experience at MIT Media Lab and Harvard Medical School. Along with him, we will be having Adolphus who's been educated at the University of Hong Kong and the University of Toronto. He's a management consultant at AiRCAD, the leading global design and consultancy organization for natural and built assets. He has worked with clients across various sectors, including banking and insurance, public sector, and NGOs. Alongside his consulting career, he's the co-founder of XYZ, a startup which transforms urban navigation and retail experience. So I welcome you both. The mic and the screen is yours.
Right, thank you. All right, so I guess we could start, Yujie. So today's very grateful that we have this opportunity to enjoy this great platform to share sort of our thoughts, and actually had the opportunity to reflect on our careers and thoughts on architecture and design as a whole discipline. So thank you very much, and we apologize for the delay again. And so here we want to discuss architecture and maybe Yujie, you could express a little bit on what we would discuss following.
Yeah, your slide is frozen.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe nevertheless, thank you for the introduction, but I'll still go with an introduction of myself. So I come from backgrounds in architecture and urban planning, if you from your very good introduction of myself, you might actually be thinking that why I would actually decide to move towards the sector of management consulting, from the architecture background. So this is the primary reason is that I actually treat myself as a social scientist. So I'm hugely keen on understanding the social roots, which I believe to be the ultimate roots of all sort of social societal issues and the bigger problems and across all scales. So I tend to be working across multiple disciplines and often interdisciplinary conditions. So I basically work at think tanks where I advised policy advisory on urban planning, but also economic development and also some organizational transformation. And I also enjoyed, doing some bunch of entrepreneurial work myself and with Yujie. And recently, we're working on some urban strategy stuffs. And apart from that, I just enjoy reading and enjoy studying, ideating new ideas about smart city, especially on the dimensions of policy and some social organization. Here's it's not really a framework here, but it's basically how I think about the whole purpose of my career. As from an architecture and planning background, but coming from an management consulting point of view. So I think we're talking a lot about sustainable development, and there are a bunch of tools and a bunch of technologies that could enable it to happen, and we're seeing a lot of progress in the past few years. And as you could see, many people would be looking at the tangible sides and the intangible sides, the building assets, most direct, from the architect's point of view. And, maybe technology, you have new medias and also environment, ecology, but also we have the intangible side of things, which would be the culture and the society, human capital, and the mechanism, which I tend to describe it this way, but it means like policy and all those sort of things. And I focus on the intangible side of this sustainable development. And I enjoy looking at the synthesis between the tangible and intangible sides here. Yeah, I believe with these deep learning of the roots of all issues and understand the megatrends, it's quite critical, and I enjoy serving on this role. Maybe I'll pass it to Yujie on sharing your experience before we move into our other discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hi everyone. As mentioned, my name is Yujie, and I also did my undergrad study at University of Toronto. I majored in architecture and also study environment, energy engineering, and urban planning. So I took a wide range of classes and disciplines, including design engineering and social science. And for me, the reason why I chose study architecture at the beginning is I find architecture is a great platform discipline, which can build a framework to understand the world. And early on, I really interested in physics and biology. But later I find there are many social, political, and economic issues that's not as linear as engineering or science disciplines. And so I decided to step into design and with architecture as a platform. And I'm on a mission to enhance human-human connection through shaping human-machine and human-environment relationships. This is what I'm currently working on. Maybe it's a bit away from the conventional architecture practice. But this is the path I find that's where I can leverage my my skills, experience, and most my interest and drive the impacts. So as you see on the right, there's an image that I collaged from the book the Eyes of Skin, which on the left is the machine, like robot's hand with a robotic eye, and on the right is human hand with human eye. And that's basically tell my interest in how I want to mediate the human and machine perception. I've been doing research in media lab fluid interface groups on EEG-based brain-computer interface, especially to understand and enhance our attention, release fatigue, and help people focus on the tasks. And in Harvard Medical School, I also conduct circadian research to doing simulations on the lighting environment's impact on human circadian health. And I've been working in various industries in supply chain, healthcare, mixed reality, digital therapeutics, and my current interest is I think although the industries are different, but there are many transferable skills, and I really benefit from my architecture education. To go next, please. Yeah, and this is the framework for my research and practice. So on the human side, we have like senses, but we also have the our physiological and sensory limitations, which can be complemented by the machine perception, which enabled by various sensors that can detect the range out of our sensory ranges. And here, our sensory experience would use the awareness, and with intention, we can our human can manipulate the data, structuralize the data that the sensor or the machine collect from the environment. And if we can synthesize that data, we get information, and we make that information perceivable and contribute to our intention, we get intelligence. And that's my way of understanding the human-machine interaction. This bridge the gap between the digital and the physical world. Next, please. Yeah, and I'd like to actually today I think it's a great chance to have a conversation with you guys and look back on architectural intelligence. And Adolphus, and me, we are practicing kind of in like non-conventional domains, but we find the architectural intelligence really be our backbone in like different types of problem thinking. And I'd like to share some eureka moments in my study of architecture, and hopefully that also resonate with your learning. And we can start. Next slide. Yeah, and the first is I'd like to share is Lacantin Vassaux. So this is the firm that got the Pritzker Award this year, which their architecture practice are very modest to the context they're operating, and the first encounter with Lacantin Vassaux is actually through the book called Spatial Agency. I highly recommend if you have time. This book is really refreshing my mind and reshape my understanding of design and architecture. So the main thesis in this book is that in many cases, or spatial problems, building is not the the best solution. And there's an anecdote story that really I remember is in the earlier time, the French government commissioned La Cannavasseau to renovate their public swimming pool because they think there's a very less and decreasing participation rate of the public to come to this public swimming pool. And they thought it's because the facility and the building is too old, and then they want a new building to attract public back. And after a month of research and design, La Cannavasseau's their proposal is actually very simple, just a paper with a rescheduled timetable of the bus route. And so it's through their research, deep research in the how people, the public access or activities around the swimming pool. They find that the root reason why people no longer come to the public swimming pool is not really the building is too old, but the bus route is changed, and right now it cannot get to the swimming pool in the weekend or where the public has most time to come to have fun or exercise. So from this story, I really learned that design here is as a strategy, and as architect, when we're facing problems, we may tend to solve that from a spatial perspective, but for lots of time, it may not be the case, and it requires deep and system thinking to understand what the problem really is. And this probably differs from the architecture education. And architecture, understand that architecture is not about problem solving. For many cases, in the education, architecture would be kind of a practice of your own agency, what you care about. Here, I just want to share this very impressive story for me that bring me back to the real world and to have a holistic perspective, understanding of the problem we're facing. Next one, please. The second one I will share is the panopticon. And here I really think this is a unique architectural intelligence or this is a very famous architect that Jeremy Bentham is a social theorist and philosopher that came up with in the 18th century. And the basic idea is that the central tower, if the guard lies in the central tower, and the glass is there's an outward-inward relationship. The guard can look outward to the cells where prison are living in, but the prison cannot see what's happening inside the central tower, and this creates a very interesting social relationship or the viewing relationship that the prisoner would perceive the guard is always presenting. So this is a very interesting case of space as a medium for social manipulation. I would like to recommend the book on the right, Suspensions of Perception, written by Jonathan Crary. This book really back up the our understanding of the panopticon. The main argument in this book is that we tend to believe that what we see is the truth. However, what we see is also manipulated by the social media, the institution, and there are many factors that affect what we can see before what we see. So think in this case, it's really important to consider the social context and when like in our design practice, and be aware of this social manipulation and the power of that can bring by the architecture design. Next, please. And the third one to share is the Duchamp's doors, which is also a very important architectural element in the shotgun house. Shotgun house is a narrow house and with a revolving door, which can close both in the private room or the corridor. And this forms a very interesting public-privacy relationship by simply rotating the door. This very simple element in architecture, but this actually present lots of social organization and human dynamics that architecture could bring. I find this very powerful in terms of these very fundamental architectural elements. I think it's really significant to understand how these architectural elements work and why they evolve over the history. For example, in the corridor in the earlier mid-centuries, there's no corridor, and when you pass one room to the other room, you have to pass the private space. But the corridor, with just a simple passage, it totally changed the human dynamics inside the house and create this semi-private and public space, and that's kind of a revolution in architecture. Next one, please. Next one, please. There's some mistakes in the and the other one to share is that really inspire me is Cedric Price. So Cedric Price has a very famous project called Fun Palace, which he view architecture as a framework of activities. With there's no contrary to the static understanding of all the structure and the space. Cedric Price think the program and the space can be rearranged and adapt to the inhabitants' needs. So this is a very inspiring idea that I find a way to understand the space and the relationship, and also bring the human perspective, where the actual inhabitant or the user of the space back to the consideration, and it also reflected by the cybernetics, cybernetic control theory, which if you're interested, I also recommend you to look into how Cedric Price think about the architectural design in a framework and a cybernetic way. Next one, please. This is a very interesting. So this is called the SICK, and on the left image you can see. This is a very famous experiment that Nicholas Negroponte in MIT Architecture Machine Group in 1970s conducted. So he put gerbils, which is the animal, inside a block of a city, space of blocks, and when the gerbils run and bump into the blocks, it will dislocate the box or the block, And there's a robotic arm that programmed to either fix that dislocation or make that dislocation continuous. So there's a very simple algorithm at backhand that controls how the robotic arm work. And this is the one that really bring me to my interest in the behavior side. With like more like computerized environment and like with all those sensors collecting information, collecting data in the space, how can we shape our built environment that respond to our behavior? So in that case, like create a behavior environment which respond to the participants in the space by the behavior pattern. I think these are this is a very important project to me that lead to a series of my research related to behavior later in my study and career. Go next one, please. And on the other end, I also find myself really interested in perception and senses, which is related to the phenomenology in architecture. And the book by Giovanni Plasma has really inspired me to think about our sensory modality, various sensory modality. And in architecture, we tend to find that the visual perception becomes the dominant one. So where are other senses participate or involve in our like, spatial understanding and activities? So I think there are some very good examples of, for example, by Peter Gunther, the thermal baths in walls, and there's also some artistic projects like the Lover that bring us back to be aware of the haptic, the acoustic, the auditory, the other senses into our consideration, in our design consideration. Next one, please. And by going through these kind of inspiring moments in my architecture study, I just want to like say that there are many ways of doing architecture. And as you can see in this diagram, it's a taxonomy of architectural firms. And they are, these firms have quite different agenda, and some like overlap with another. But I think one thing from architecture design education I find is to find your agency. So in lots of the studio work, like we are given like maybe like a project brief, and there are some tasks and requirements that we want to accomplish by design. But by just completing or fulfilling those requirements doesn't mean it's an architecture design. And I think the most important thing behind that is the agency and intentionality of your work. I think architecture discipline really brings us this opportunity to dig deeper in ourselves, like what we care about. And there may be like this activism, social activism that you really want to express through your project. Or there may be like climate change. You want to alleviate this climate, the carbon emission and pressure in the environment. Or there are also like social dynamics that you want to maybe get involved in. So there are many ways of doing architecture. So my suggestion, one of my suggestions is that really through your various reading and study and practicing, to think about what architecture do you want, and not only in a spatial perspective, but from many perspectives that I mentioned about. And that's, I think, brings actual architectural intelligence that can benefit us in our design career, and maybe beyond the architecture practice. Yeah. Next, please. Yeah. So we also want to talk about design the new normal. So architecture is always evolving, and so as our behavior. If you can go next page, please. Yeah. So this is what I mentioned, a research I did before that based on the SEEK project. So the SEEK on the left one image shows that this is like a logic-driven system where the robotic arm would respond to the behavior of the gerbils. But in this case, if we look deeper into this loop, the very simple algorithm that control the robotic arm is actually predetermined by very direct logic, and that brings this kind of subjectivity into consideration. So if that we don't understand gerbils well, and that's like based on like human bias, like what may be like a good environment or space to the gerbils, and we program the robotic arms. And then I think about in the future in the later research, which in the middle called the SEEK2, I consider this data-driven process, which the algorithm or the agenda behind the environment mechanism is actually adapting and changing. So in other words, the environment is learning from our behavior and act upon that. So I won't go deeper into this project, but I think what's important here is the dynamism and the adaptiveness. So the response coming from the spatial environment may not be determined by a direct like algorithm, but by like a learning process that really leverage the data insights in this context. But again, this also brings the problem like the learning algorithm is also programmed by our human selves. So how do we come up with the matrix? This is the matrix means like a way of like measurement or assess the success of some tasks. And here, if we want to, in this research, our research group create this kind of reconfigurable landscape by this like the blocks that can be lifting up and down, and that create this dynamic topography, and the ants that be putting on this surface would behave in different ways. And we took the data from like camera image, do like sequential sensing like over time, and to then generate to control how the block move up and down in this case. So this is like a feedback loop that include the both the behaviors change and also the environment's agency. And so my question is like, what's next? So all this research aim is to understand how our human behavior and activities happen within the space, And we see lots of there are different exciting research on like living environment and how we work, how we play, and how we move. So what comes next? I think it's a good questions to ask ourselves and explore. And Adolphus, you can go to the next slide.
Yes.
I think it's frozen in this page.
Do you see redefining wearable infrastructure 3.0?
No, no.
No?
Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay, okay, all right, great.
Yeah. And in terms of the our thinking on like planning a city, Adolphus and I previously worked on this project called Internet of Breath. And we came up with the idea of wearable infrastructure. We're looking to how infrastructure evolve over time. So from my perspective, the infrastructure 1.0 is actually the static structure and the facilities we see, like the road networks, the water dams, and these infrastructure are planned or constructed with a top-down managed logic. And later on, we see there are MIT MIT Sensible City Lab actually conducted this very interesting research called City Scanner, where they load the environmental sensors on the top of the garbage truck or in the autonomous boats. So this is to leverage the mobility of our city. Like the garbage truck would go to every streets in the city, and in this case there are lots of intelligence and insights we can leverage by this comprehensive and spatial roads that this garbage truck go through, and so we can think of this as in terms of the mobility, like the bike, the drone, the boat, the truck. They all have very different spatial resolution, and also the resolution in terms of the time and the impact area. So that we see is still like a top-down process, but this time it's coordinated with what's happening in our daily life, and so this is like a progress. And then in the next stage, I think is we can really see the wearable, like the everyday objects that being embedded with intelligence become another layer of infrastructure. And this can be our like phone case and maybe your shoes. And you see that this is directly like our like personal objects and devices that make this bottom-up initiated insight that driven by the data insights we get from this infrastructure layer. And I see these three layers, they're not replacing the other, but in other words, they are working and expanding the infrastructure that how infrastructure get involved in our life. And the layer, the upper layer will enhance the basic layer of infrastructure's function and performance. And this will be the next stage we can look into. Next, please. Adolphus, it's frozen again.
It's the Internet of Breaths.
Yeah.
You could on how this works. Do you see it?
No.
Sorry, maybe there's a delay with my internet or whatever. Is it still stuck?
Yeah, it's still on the previous page.
Okay, let me try it.
You want to try like reshare the screen?
Yeah, maybe you could stop presenting and present again.
Okay, yeah, sure. All right, I'll try resharing my entire screen. All right. Sorry, can you see my screen here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Adolphus can jump into this.
Sure, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'll jump through these slides quickly so that we could have our Q&A. Is how this change provides an opportunity for us to reinvestigate and understand the realities around us. And I think one of the perspectives of looking at this reality is from the environmental perspective. When we started the project of breaths, we were considering cities, especially in the more kind of developing regions where there were some sort of extreme air conditions, could be due to the economic development modes, or it could be also natural conditions in the region that we actually practice to understand how this wearable infrastructure, as Yujie just mentioned right now, could be executed. And here, maybe describing more technically, is a combination of the wearables and also the everyday devices, your phone, and also the wearable objects, which is here. We could really sense what's around you, because sometimes the air pollution would be visible, but sometimes it's not. So I think with this new type of infrastructure, we are really understanding our surroundings in a much more detailed and with new possibilities of seeing layers we weren't able to see, and thus delivering some of the very important kind of social impacts. And this is not so about the evolution. It's about seeing the possibility of the ability of seeing the hidden layers, and informing other kind of decision making, such as in the public policy. If there's an air pollution and you have the kind of data trends, you could translate that into certain kind of policy decisions, or you could even kind of optimize the production models with the entire kind of across the cities, across the regions, and even moving upwards would be across different regions to see how moving, how that impacts the human health in a personal way. So I think this is a really great project that I enjoyed doing. And I think as in a new normal, we are seeing also a reality in a way that humans are connected in ways that we were able to estimate, anticipate, but we never experienced before. So just by, for example, with the work from home, or the lockdown, humans. This is a connected way. They're also connected in a greater magnitude in other ways, such as from the digital medium and things like that. I think this case study really provides the opportunity for us to understand that by design, with the kind of personal devices, how that very bottom level device should be connected with the higher level policy agenda, and also the mechanism for many things. Here it would be for pollutions, but it could also be for public health and personal health care. So what I try to illustrate here is that across within a single purpose, there's a system that we need to kind of drive citizen participation, especially I would say that under this new norm, where people are more connected with the digital system, but they are in some way disconnected physically, and this sort of systematic design across different levels would be significant in improving the people's quality of life, and basically illustrate that even with this is bottom-up driven insights, with planners or with policy advisors or as consultants, it's important to have a top-down perspective. Despite you're having like bottom-up driven insights, you need to kind of envision more kind of features to try the impacts of the connective media here. For example, you need some other trends such as health rewards, which you have like opportunities of giving like health rewards through data provided from the personal devices, or some sort of personal healthcare records or whatever data platforms. So the point here is that we have more bottom-up driven opportunities, but I think increasingly we're seeing a more important role of the government, of the state, to actually looking at the layers of realities that weren't able, previous governments of the past realities cannot see. And under this new norm, they would need to introduce new features, new policy features, and new mechanics to drive the whole change, the whole transformation with these introduction of new media, let's say. And yes, maybe I'll skip this slide. And another reality that I would like to describe is that I think in the very past, we were, have a lot of perceived assumptions. So we used to preset a lot of assumptions, with the way we consumed. And I think especially when I was in a career that I was switching from the architecture background to a more kind of public policy background, I learned from the think tanks, the public policy context, that we in the city we have a lot of problems with consumption models, and we have that preset assumptions because that we're living in certain realities, especially those of us who live in the urban environment, which makes us accustomed to certain way of living, in simpler ways, as certain lifestyles. But as we see more opportunities with the innovations, agri-tech or e-commerce or whatever technological medium, we should also look at the limits. And I think with the new norm that we were discussing right now, actually provided an opportunity for us to really reset these assumptions. So, for example, I took it as an example already, work from home. As corporates, we were kind of envisioning that people would be more productive in the office, but turns out, you know what, like a global consultancy, the Big Fours provided an evidence that they surveyed a lot of people. Actually, 80% of the people weren't that very interested in coming back to the office after this pandemic. So we understand that there are assumptions that we have and we took for granted as corporate culture and as certain standards as in the industry or as in public administration, that we should reset, and we need to look at other attributes such as the ecological limits, pollutions wise, the cultural dimensions. Are we seeing also heritage, because we are moving forward for development. Now here, I don't mean just innovation, but also development-wise, urban development. And when we consume anything by design, is it having any kind of economic externalities? And even with computer consumption of computer devices is using consuming a lot of rare metals in its production. So it actually caused a lot of geopolitical effects behind the scene, but we weren't seeing that.
Hello. Hi. No, I'm so sorry, but we're short on time, so we might have to.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I understand. I'll go through it quickly.
Yeah.
All right. So I think as we move forward, we also need to look backwards, and these two dynamics, these dual of combination of perspectives would lead us to an optimum level of development, or the optimum way that would drive towards us for better quality of life, which development itself is not actually the purpose, but the purpose we should remind ourselves is to drive improvements of life. And as in any roles as urban planners or architects, designers, we should have that social perspectives. And I think design thinking in practice, I think as architects, we are all kind of makers. Urban planners, we're makers. We need to have that design mindset in practice for like everything, so that you in any roles you could solve problems beyond the urban kind of scale, but in the society, it could be more tangible or it could be more intangible. But here, just for example, we are kind of analyzing the DNA of a city, which is rather abstract here, and keep in mind there are conventional wisdoms. I think this is extremely important when we're thinking about like societies in development. There are cultures in Africa or whatever, in ASEAN countries. We need to keep in mind that the model we're seeing as advanced development might not represent the best model for development. So we need to kind of conserve the conventional wisdoms, which in what I'm showing here is a conventional way of produce, but then we could reinvent it with the newer technologies by social reorganization and some sort of policy agenda, introduction of policy agenda, and some strategy things. And yes, that's the end of my part. And Yujie, I think we could open for Q&A.